Alright, this is for all of you who were asking me to do this, even though I kept saying I was scared to do this again. It's been a while since I've made a video. It's been a while. What can I say? I've been busy. Let's start there. I am not going off of a script. You probably couldn't tell. I was streaming on TikTok the other day, which is something that I don't normally do, and surprisingly had some conversations with a few familiar faces and got to talking about YouTube videos again. And for those of you who, I'm gonna assume, just going off of a hunch here, that when I post this video, it's only going to reach the people who are looking for it, the people who are already subscribed to my channel and waiting around for another video, which I would probably realistically wager, if you will, that's not many people, considering the fact that I fell off the face of the earth when it came to this channel, and I am easily accessible on literally every other platform but this one. So it's not that I disappeared, I just relocated, and I started doing Twitch streams inconsistently, but consistently enough that it kind of filled that hole, that gap in my life that YouTube had once previously filled. And when I stopped making videos, I was no longer qualified for getting any sort of payout from YouTube. Not that there was much to begin with, but it was something worth continuing to make content for, I will say. Because when you're a creator online, anything that helps you pay the bills is worth investing time into. And once my YouTube kind of fell out and no longer qualified for that, I didn't have a lot of motivation to get back to it. I can tell you why, and a lot of it is just performance anxiety. Once my other platforms started to blow up, once Patreon blew up, TikTok, Instagram all started to take off, I was encountering something that I'm not unfamiliar with, but in the amount that I was receiving it, I was a little overwhelmed. That would be negative attention, which, to be fair, I would say it wasn't that much. In fact, I've been incredibly lucky that most of the attention that I've received on my platforms for my art and my comics and the content that I make now has been overwhelmingly positive. But because I was getting negative attention for things that I couldn't have anticipated, it gave me a new complex. And it was about performing and being a person on the internet in front of other people. It scared me for the first time in a long time. I've been scared of being on the internet before. I've been scared of getting in front of people and live streaming and letting others hear my voice. I kind of became desensitized to it over the years because I got so used to doing it. And in practice, because I became comfortable doing it, it was less of a fear. But when I was reintroduced to the concept of negative attention, which is again not something that I'm unfamiliar with, just in lower doses, I was reminded that I'm not for everybody. And that's okay. But when this first started to kick off, it was kind of overwhelming. And I thought, well, I have to maintain my presence, I guess, if you will, on my bigger social media accounts where I am doing a big chunk of my job, which is promoting my webcomics, my Patreon. But on other lesser known accounts, especially YouTube, because I feel YouTube, if given the opportunity, can sometimes be one of the most perfect conditions for terrible interaction. And when I first made my YouTube channel, that was the case. I was getting a lot more negative attention because I was talking about things like, you guys remember art style theft? You remember when that was a big thing we used to argue about? And then AI came along, and now that's not really anything that we talk about anymore because the robots are stealing our jobs. I'm not trying to trivialize that. In fact, as you can tell, it's been a while since I've done this. I haven't even done my introduction. Hey guys, my name is Kaez. I am a webcomic artist. I have spent the last nearly decade trying to make a living off of making a webcomic, and it failed a few times, and then all of a sudden back in 2022, a miracle happened, and I made a straight ship that everybody fell in love with, or at least the general audience did. And my Patreon blew up, And then I started making that comic weekly and also adult comics weekly. I would like to preface this by saying that this is also one of the reasons why I didn't want to get back into making YouTube videos, because I felt like my advice would come from a different lens. I was worried that people would not take my words of advice as seriously because I transitioned into making adult content, specifically not safe for work comics, if we're just gonna call it what it is. And that is strictly exclusively for the time being a Patreon thing. That is not something that I post publicly yet, but I will eventually, sometime in 2025, start hosting my Not Safe for Work comic catalog on my own website. I'm very scared to do that, but I'm also very excited because that's not something that I ever saw myself doing. And the reason that I was worried about people and their opinions of that matter is, well, one, it shouldn't matter because I am over 30 years old and I'm grown and I draw what I want to draw. But I was worried that people wouldn't take it as seriously because there's a stigma. It's not often and it's not common, but I didn't want people to lose hope and think that I was another case of, well, this is my last resort, so I'm going to segue into doing not safe for work material. This wasn't my last resort. This is what I wanted to do. I just felt guilty wanting to do it. And when given the opportunity to start working on a webcomic full-time, the pilot for that comic was mature in nature. It was explicit. And that is what kickstarted my Patreon growth. And so I asked, I surveyed, I polled, I vetted my patrons through and through, and I said, is this what you want more of? Do you want more of these characters, or do you want more not safe for work? And it very vocally, it was confirmed that they wanted both. And I said, okay, I can happily do both because I love both of these things. But coming from my experience, because it worked out for me and it worked out so well, I don't want it to seem like, well, I was in a bad place and so I started doing not safe for work because I didn't have any other choice. I had been doing not safe for work long before this opportunity presented itself. It just wasn't something that I was doing as often because I didn't have an excuse to do it. And when I talk about my experiences with making webcomics and doing what I do and promoting and having a schedule and being consistent and maintaining a story and also doing all these things while caring for a child, having a home life, trying to improve my craft, trying to maintain relationships and hobbies outside of it, I want to share those experiences, but I don't want it to be muddied with the lens of, well, I'm a not safe for work artist, so that's where all of my money comes from. Is it true? Probably. But it's not because I didn't have any other choice. And do I believe that if I stopped doing not safe for work today, I would lose all of my Patreon support? No. Would I lose a good chunk of it? Probably. But I think that I could build from the audience that I have right now and maintain doing safe for work material just with my OCs, because I have been able to connect with my audience and to bring them something that they enjoy and are invested in, regardless of if it's adult material or not. The question becomes, is that what I want to do? The answer is simply no. Because I like this. I just say that because I want to reiterate to people who feel like, well, I want art to be my main thing and I don't want not safe for work to be my last resort. I don't want that to be what I go into, and I feel like I would only be successful if I did that. Let me give you some advice. Excuse me. I started doing not safe for work back in 2015, 2016. And it was bad and nobody liked it. And I thought I was going to make big money off of that, and I didn't. So if you don't have the heart in it, if it's not something that you want to do already, you're not going to be able to sell it to people. So don't worry. If you don't want to do not safe for work, you don't have to. Because if you don't want to do it, nobody's going to twist your arm. Nobody's going to say, here's $500, you have to draw not safe for work. You have to. If you don't want to do it, nobody's going to force you. They will find that audience elsewhere, which also kind of sounds counterintuitive or not productive. I'm trying to be optimistic here, and it sounds like I'm being catty. No, listen, I'm trying to give advice in the sense that if you want something and you want it bad enough, it'll happen. That's not true. You can want something as hard as you've wanted anything in your entire life, harder than you've wanted anything else in your entire life, and it will never happen. Because, well, speaking from experience, sometimes wanting the thing is not enough. You have to put the work in. I hate to say that. And I think part of the reason that I've been able to maintain making my webcomics and having a decent living off of making my webcomics these past 2 years, which I've been so lucky. Like, honestly, I just want to say it again. Part of the reason I didn't want to come on here and even talk about this is because it sounds like I'm bragging, but I'm not sharing this with you guys because I'm trying to rub it in anybody's faces. I just know that when I was in the position that I was in, before I was lucky enough to have this happen to me, that people were generous enough to give me this opportunity. Before all of that, I wanted so desperately to know what those Patreon artists were doing to get as many patrons as they had. What were they doing? How do you make that happen? And how do you retain it? That's what I wanted. So when I get on here and I tell you guys about my experience, it's not me saying, hey, look at what I did, look at me, look at how well I'm doing, sucks for you. No, I'm speaking to me 2.5 years ago. I'm trying to speak to somebody who's in this position that I was in because I wanted to know, what did you do? How did that work for you? How did it feel? What were some ups and downs of that? Like, I want to share that experience with you guys. Maybe not in this video because I don't have time to do all of that right now. And I do believe that a video like that will require a bit more planning and scripting and whatnot. And I've been doing surprisingly well so far in this, considering that I'm recording hands-free in a moving vehicle. Don't worry, I'm being safe. If that's something that you guys want me to talk about, I will, because I believe that if I was lucky enough for it to happen to me, I say all the time, and I try not to reaffirm it because if I believe it, I'll start to, self-fulfilling prophecy and all that. But I say all the time that I feel that there are more deserving artists out there. That I'm like, I haven't done enough. Which is also BS because I work a lot. But I've convinced myself, like, if I could do it, anybody can do it. And so that's why I guess I'm gonna start making videos again. And the other thing is that when I was in that TikTok stream, as weird as it is, I usually stream on Twitch. I also mentioned, because a lot of people were asking me when I was going to bring Lucky back, or if I ever thought about Lucky anymore, or anything like that. And it occurred to me, for those of you who don't know, Lucky is my LGBT sci-fi drama webcomic that I started back in 2015, started posting it to Webtoon Canvas in 2018, and it went on hiatus in 2022 before I started working on the new comics, before all this other stuff kicked off. It was on hiatus because I was doing very bad financially and I needed to dig myself out of a hole, and I took on some commissions to help keep the lights on and keep my kid in school at the time. And then I realized during that time that I was probably going to have to quit art if I didn't have a breakthrough anytime soon and start doing something else. And that's why I put the comic on hiatus, because I couldn't see myself working on it while I was trying to work on these other things to pay the bills. All of that is to say, I haven't touched it since then, which is devastating. And I think the assumption is, I was talking about this in the stream, I think the assumption is that because I haven't touched it or worked on it or talked about it, that I don't care about it anymore, or that I don't want to talk about it anymore. And then it occurred to me, and I said, well, that's not true. I just don't break it up because most of my audience is here for Haunting Dagger, which is the comic that I do that blew up. Most of my audience is here for that, and these other characters that I was doing on Patreon, like, a lot of people don't even know about Lucky. So I thought that if I talked about Lucky, people wouldn't care about that. So that's why I wasn't talking about it. And that's probably why other people weren't asking me about it, because they thought I didn't care and that I didn't want to talk about it. I was like, that couldn't be more wrong. So then I'm sitting there talking about, well, what am I going to do to get it to come back? Because realistically, I do 4 comic pages a week, which doesn't sound like a lot to a lot of people, but considering my schedule and my current workload, it's a good amount. It's a good chunk of work that I have to do every week. And I have an assistant who helps me with flats. And I had always said that if I ever wanted to bring Lucky back, I would have to meet higher Patreon goals, which sounds greedy, but I don't. It's not just me. I pay 2 other people to help me. And I needed to be able to realistically and comfortably pay my assistant to help me with an additional page to 2 pages a week if I wanted to bring Lucky back, which I did. I do. I still do. I will continue to want to bring Lucky back. Like, that hasn't changed. But I have not been promoting the series in order to promote those Patreon goals. And Apple is always changing things, and Patreon's payment processing whatever is always messing things up, so people are always getting declined and canceled at the end of the month. And my retention rate has been pretty solid for the past 2 years. I will say it's been pretty consistent, and I'm super grateful for that. But we don't have to get into the numbers here. Long story short, I can't expect people to show up for me to start working on an additional comic on top of the other 2 that I'm doing weekly. 3 comics a week, which would be crazy, and I would love that, and let's do it. Come on. I can't expect people to get on board if I'm not putting the work in and promoting it. And I know this because I'm Mr. 2020 promote the shit out of my series, get nearly 80,000 readers just from talking about it and not posting any updates for most of the year. I know this because I've lived it and I've experienced it. And so I said, well, what if I just started trying to promote it again and did like personal research on how well the promoting goes and whether or not I can help rebuild a new audience for Lucky so that there can be some more Patreon growth. And then I share that experience on my YouTube channel. Because when I first made my YouTube channel, it was me talking about my experience with being a webcomic artist who was trying to become a webtoon original with Lucky. I wanted Lucky to be my full-time thing. I still fantasize about doing Lucky full-time. But it ended up not working out, and then I switched over to a different comic, and so I felt guilty. I didn't want to make videos about making webcomics anymore because I had to put the other webcomic to the side. And my tattoo is bothering me. And now that I'm, I guess, trying to make videos again, I want to. Well, I'm recording, aren't I? It's a good start. And you know what? It's been going pretty well so far. I want to do that. I want restarting this to be about my experiences with having a decent, well-received webcomic that I've become financially stable off of. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to everybody involved in that. I'm just thanking you from the bottom of my heart because I am able to take care of my family. And that's been life-changing. I mean, even to this day, you know, it's been almost 2 years since this journey has started. And even to this day, I'm still dumbstruck because I still can't believe that this is my life. And I'm so happy. I'm so grateful. But what was I saying? But also to progress? What's the word I'm looking for? Something. Holy crap. Catalog? I don't know what the word is that I'm thinking of. To keep progress on the process, we're just going to say all the P words that I was thinking, of me trying to revive my original webcomic and to talk about that along the way, because Lucky was so central to this channel and it's still so central to me. And I think that it would be a good way for me to reintroduce myself back into making YouTube videos, to reintroduce myself to you guys, maybe some new followers, some new subscribers, and also any opportunity that I am given to share any of my experiences with you all in regards to being a webcomic artist, having a Patreon that does relatively well, maintaining a good and consistent schedule with updating without it costing me too much of my personal life, because let's be realistic, it is work. And there are nights where I'm banging my head on the wall, like, why did I wait to the last minute to ink this page? But it is good and gratifying work if you love webcomics and it's something that you want to do full time because you have stories that you desperately want to tell and characters that you so desperately want to bring to life. And you want to hear from somebody. There are so many amazing webcomic and webtoon creators on YouTube, I will say. And I will recommend as many as I can remember in the description. I am fixing to have to go. But if you want to follow along with somebody who has done it and failed, done it and did relatively well, and is trying to bring back a project that was not greenlit by Webtoon and revive it for my own personal passion project and renew an audience for it and cataloging that entire process, then follow along, maybe. If it's something you're interested, I promise not all of my videos are going to sound like I'm in the back of somebody's trunk, which is exactly where I am right now. Don't ask any questions. I can't tell you anything. They're listening to me. Yeah, just follow along and I will see how this video does. I'm actually really nervous to even just be making this. Every single time I've tried to record something for a video in the past year and a half, I've deleted it because I chicken out. So be gentle. It's been a while. I miss creating for my YouTube community. I do. And I will be back with more and hopefully be a little bit more organized next time. So I'm gonna sign out. Again, my name is Kaez. If you want to follow me in my day-to-day stuff, you can follow me on X, I guess, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, all under Kaez Hell. My Patreon is patreon.com/aluckyartist. It is only if you are 18 or older. It is very adult. 2 updates a week for A Haunting Dagger, which is a supernatural romance about a werewolf rock star who falls in love with a haunted cheerleader. It's cute, it's fun, it's traditional pages. I do reformat them for Webtoon. I also update a Not Safe for Work comic twice a week on that. I think the current one is 2 lucky side characters. And I always poll for what characters people want to see in those comics and illustrations. So if you want to have a say in the stuff that I'm doing on my Patreon, you can check that out. And then if you don't want to, you don't want to subscribe, you just want to read one of the comics or 2 of the comics, you can go to my Patreon shop and just get a digital download for any of the individual comics in my Not Safe for Work catalog. There are 11 so far. The 12th one is updating. And if you don't want to spend any money at all, I have great news. I post Haunting Dagger to Webtoon Canvas for free. It updates weekly. And all of Lucky is available to read on Webtoon Canvas. It is on hiatus, so once you catch up, just fingers crossed, hoping and seeing whenever we're going to bring that back. So go check that out if you want to. Let me know what you think. Lucky, just a short blurb on that. It is an LGBT sci-fi drama about a shapeshifter who travels to Earth to escape his destiny. But there's a bounty hunter there who has other plans for him. It's an ensemble cast. It's a little rough around the edges. It is my first original webcomic project. So, take it with a grain of salt. But I love it very much and I can't wait to get back to it. So I'm going to go now. And good luck with all of your projects and endeavors. And thank you so much for sitting through this video. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.